joining the board. From last is welcome. No, I don't think so. Next, I'll read the ethics statement. In accordance with the State Government's Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. Do you have any conflicts? Oh. Thank you. And next is public comments. Do you have any comments from the public?
Yeah.
Mr.
Martin, if you'd like to make your comment now, we also have a public comment period at the end of the meeting.
Oh.
So whatever, if you'd like to make your comment now or later, it's
sure.
up to you.
I'll do it now. Okay.
My name is Larry Morton. I live in Hendersonville. I moved down here 17 years ago when I retired, and I've been a very active participant in the Model Railroad Club that's in Hendersonville, the Apple Valley Model Railroad Club, which we've grown to 100 members. I've always had an interest in railroading. I didn't work in railroading, I was a computer technician. But in talking to the public, which is something I like to do when I'm at the Model Railroad Club, I discovered that there was a lot of interest in people being able to ride a local train. It's a novelty. It might be a better thing than trying to fight the traffic on 26, especially right now while they're working on it, so on and so forth. So I started to talk to people about the idea of a train that would run back and forth on a daily basis between Hendersonville and Asheville. And I kept getting very positive response from everybody, from not only my club members, but the public, from the city of Hendersonville, and so on and so forth. So about 6 years ago, I put together a team to look into this. I have a fellow named Dr. Robert Wright, who has a doctorate in administration, and he's excellent at handling bureaucracies and government forms and knowing how to handle paperwork processes and so on and so forth. I have an attorney named Bruce McDonald, who's a retired attorney. I have a woman named Paula Ritchie, who has a strong background in marketing. She's a real dynamic person, and the four of us sat down and said, let's look and see if we can't do this. Well, we dove into it. We found out there's plenty of public interest. That wasn't an issue at all. But can we get a train back and forth? How do we do this? At that time, Blue Ridge Southern was operating the tracks, as you know, and their main industry was the Canton paper mill. And I said, well, if we don't have Blue Ridge Southern on board, it's a dead issue. So I went and talked to them, and they said, hell no, we're too busy. We don't want anything to do with passenger trains. We don't want the liability, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't give up. I kept looking and talking to people. But I also was told that Norfolk Southern wouldn't let my passenger train on their tracks in Asheville. They said, again, hell no, this is what I was told they would say. This is not what they said. I talked to the North Carolina Rail Division over in Charlotte, and they said they'd help me out with it and so on. But we couldn't overcome the problem of Blue Ridge Southern not wanting to haul our train. So we thought, well, maybe we'll have an independent train. We'll get our own train. Well, then we found out that if we're going to operate two different railroads on the same tracks between Hendersonville and Asheville, everything has to be upgraded at a cost of millions and millions of dollars and so on. And I said, I don't think we can support this. I don't know much about getting grants, but I'm learning. So after about 3 years of trying, we kind of gave this up. Well, the light went on when the Canton paper mill opened up. They got a different general closed, I mean. The Blue Ridge Southern got a different general manager, and I went over and talked to him, and I said, if I ask you, by the way, Blue Ridge Southern did all their work during the day between Asheville and Hendersonville. When the Canton paper mill, or at night, when the Canton paper mill closed, they shifted all that to the daytime. So I went to them and I said, how would you feel about getting up early in the morning, running a train from Hendersonville to Asheville and back, and then go do your work, your freight work all day long, and at the end of the afternoon, run another train up and back, get commuters to work and people who want to visit the other city for the day. And they said, you get the train, you get the cars together, we'll start tomorrow. I mean, it had a 180-degree turnaround in their attitude. So I called my team and I said, I think we're back in the business to start looking at this. How about let's have a meeting and let's sit down and talk? So we did. We decided to reinvigorate this thing. So I called Norfolk Southern and I said, if we wanted to do this, can we get onto your tracks? Just to let you know, in case you don't know, Norfolk Southern owns the tracks through Asheville and heading east. And over in Biltmore Village is what's called a railroad Y, where the track goes east and west, but then there's tracks that curve down like this and go south to Hendersonville. I wanted to get up to that Y. Well, Norfolk Southern owns a mile of track down that Y. And they own that mile because sometimes they want to turn a train around, so they back it around and head it the other direction. So I called Norfolk Southern and I said, can I use that mile of track to get a train into Biltmore Village? And they said, you pay us to do a feasibility study and we'll let you know if it's feasible. So they didn't say no to me. So at that point I said, guys, we're back in business. We need to start looking at this and see if we can do it. And in talking to different organizations, several people mentioned that I should come and talk to you guys. So that's why I'm here today. I just wanted to introduce what we're trying to accomplish. We have a spot in Hendersonville that's a short 3-block walk from the middle of the town. It's between 3rd and 4th Avenue, if you know where that is, along the tracks. It's owned by Youngblood Oil, which is closed. I talked to Ken Youngblood. He will lease us the property to put up a loading platform and a big parking lot. I'm looking in Asheville. I was looking at 2 parcels in Biltmore Village, but they're both under contract with somebody right now. I've been in touch with one of the landowners over the phone, and she said if the deal falls apart, she'd be back in touch with me. But I don't have a good spot in the Biltmore Village area. I also went over to River Arts, and if you know Asheville, where you turn off of Lyman Street onto Depot Street and head down there's a big building on the left called Pink Dog Creations. Well, Pink Dog Creations leases the lot across the street, which is a long strip along the railroad tracks. It would easily hold 100, 120 cars. Pink Dog is leasing it right now, but I called one of the co-owners and I said, what's the maximum number of cars you've ever seen in your lot? And she said, oh, they fill up the lot. And I said, well, the lot is only about 1/3 of the property. So I said, we're really not talking about a whole lot of cars. So I thought if we could get that lot and we could let Pink Dog have enough parking, the rest of the lot is big enough for us to handle a parking lot for a passenger train. I've been in touch with Ray Rapp at the Western North Carolina Rail Committee that's working on the train from Salisbury over here. He strongly supports what we're doing. We'd like to both use the same depot in Asheville when their train comes together. I've spoken with, numerous people. But anyway, I'm finding positive results as I'm going along. And so I thought it was time to start engaging the public, talking about it. If you would like, I would love to come up here with my team sometime and give you an official presentation of what we want to do. So basically, that's what I wanted to come to you and talk about today. So you have any questions for me? Or?
No, I think you'll find it interesting that we have a presentation today from the Western North Carolina Passenger Rail. Jason Myers will be given an update as well that ties in with
Okay?
Thinking about.
What do you think of the idea?
I personally think it's a fantastic idea, but I can't speak for the entire board. But personally, I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, Larry, I'd be happy to coordinate with you and your team on a future presentation, and yeah.
One of my biggest concerns right now is Hendersonville a big enough city to support something like this with a number of people that would ride, okay? And are there enough people in Asheville that want to go to Hendersonville at any given time? I mean, when I'm in the Model Railroad Club, I talk to people all the time. And, oh, yeah, we drove down from Asheville. We heard about this place. We wanted to see it and so on. Things like that.
There was a key part that you said about commuters. That might be.
Well, I have commuters going to work as a strong customer base. We have the tourism. You know, I came from Kansas and I'm spending the week in Asheville, and I thought, let's go to Hendersonville for the day, or vice versa. I came to Hendersonville, we want to go up and see the Biltmore, we want to go to the River Arts District, that type of crowd. And then we have the people that just say, hey, let's do something different today, take a train ride up to Asheville.
What we can do is, Tristan and I can get together with you and help with set up a time for a presentation for the whole board.
Yeah, I think that would be great, and we can.
The four of us are all retired, so you name the time and place, I'll buy the beer.
You may get more board members wanting to attend then. But thank you.
All right, so much. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
And I saw that Mayor Benheimer joined. She didn't get to hear me say welcome before, but thank you for joining, Mayor. Just so you know. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My pleasure.
We're glad you're here. Next is the approval of the agenda. Consent agenda. Has everyone had time to review? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion to approve. Second. Second by Larry. Time for you to do a roll call.
Am I calling on Esther?
No, for today, she'll be non-voting.
Okay. Asheville, Kimroni.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Lincoln County, Parker Sloan.
Aye.
Kansas, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
David County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Henderson County, Bill Lapsley.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Mills River, Shannon Gaunt.
Aye.
Montree, Tom Widmer. Rural Transit, David White.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
And Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
Woodfin, Jim McAllister.
Aye. I would really like to thank you for joining us today as well. The ayes have it. Next is, we're up to business, people. 4A, which is the safety performance targets.
Take it away, Logan.
Okay, so last month we had Brian Murphy from the Traffic Safety Unit from NCDOT do a really in-depth performance on safety performance targets as an informational item. This month it's coming back as a business item because we need to adopt safety performance targets by the end of February. So I'll give a quick overview of what they are again. Effective 2016, the Federal Highway Administration established 5 highway safety performance measures in accord with the Federal MAP 21 and FAST Act transportation funding bills. These measures are number of fatalities, rate of fatalities, number of serious injuries, rate of serious injuries, and number of combined non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. They're established annually based on 5-year rolling averages and are for calendar years, which is a little confusing. established based on 5-year rolling averages, and I believe they're evaluated on 5-year rolling averages, but they're established annually by calendar year. And they are set in agreement with North Carolina's Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And the goal of the most recent Strategic Highway Safety Plan is to reduce fatalities and serious injuries by half by 2035, moving towards zero by 2050. So if you scroll down a little bit, you can see the, and it's also in your agenda packet, the state calendar year 2024 safety, or a little up. The first table, thank you. These are the statewide safety performance targets adopted by the state for calendar year 2024. The state is evaluated on these, and it informs the Highway Safety Improvement Program funding each year. So these were submitted to FHWA August of last year and were adopted then. If you scroll down to the next table, you can see in red the calendar year 2024 targets for our MPO, and in black are the 5-year rolling averages for the previous several years. So a bit of a confusing table, but in red is just for calendar year 2024. All the metrics in black are averages, which inform what these targets in red are. And based on these targets compared to the targets we adopted last year are roughly 3 to 4% decrease for each metric from the ones we adopted in February of last year. So this is an action item this month. So we have two options. We can either adopt these targets, which were defined by the state's methodology, or we can use a different methodology to define our own target. It's the staff recommendation that we adopt the targets defined by the state's methodology, because using a different methodology and finding our own targets would require us to take on the responsibility of monitoring these metrics. It would require a lot of staff capacity, which is already pretty limited at this point, and it wouldn't increase our influence in the planning process at all. So it's essentially a lot more work for staff with no increased influence in the planning process. So our recommendation would be to adopt the targets defined by the state's methodology, which would essentially adopting that methodology would essentially state that the MPO aligns with the state's goal of reducing these metrics by half by 2035 and towards zero by 2050.
Okay. I know Kim Rooney had some questions last year about this, and I'll reiterate this for the new members. Are we held accountable in any way for not meeting these goals?
No. So there's no really, quote, reward for if we hit them, and there's no repercussion, quote, if we don't meet them. And historically, the state hasn't met them, the goal set, and we have not either.
Look, we got two hands up. I know that Kim had hers up for Parker.
Thank you to folks who have elevated my concerns from last year. I would also say, is there any reason that we would change the metrics so we would get different outcomes in our budgets, plans, and policies? Because if not, then I don't see that we should use staff time to measure it differently. The goal would be to get different outcomes, because while there's not a cost or benefit analysis on maybe if we get dinged, for example, on our metrics, there's certainly a cost of benefit analysis to the people who are impacted by the safety metric.
Sure. So in general, I would say, I think from a staff perspective, we don't really see a benefit in adopting a different target at this point. There are other states where they don't adopt as aggressive a target. North Carolina's safety target is fairly aggressive, as you can see. The target generally is exceeding the current trends, i.e. they're trying to decrease crashes and fatalities at a faster rate than we're seeing on the ground. I, for one, think that goes hand in hand with our MPO's goal of improving safety. I think having an aggressive target is something that makes a clear statement in line with the MPO's position that improving safety is important. From my point of view, if the state were adopting a less aggressive target, or a target that was less have crashes increase at a slightly slower rate, I think that would be more concerning. But I think for these targets, considering that there aren't any real tangible benefits to a change, this is the kind of target that we would want to see, and I think from my point of view, want to support as a region that has documented safety issues.
Thank you so much for that response. I definitely think that having an aggressive target to make our roads safer so people get to their destination safely is appropriate. So I appreciate that staff position. What it reminds me is that we have a board responsibility to prioritize our local roads and our local state corridors for safety outcomes instead of just sinking all of our money into expanding expensive interstates. And with that, I cede my time.
Thank you, Kim. Parker Sloan.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is, I guess, are there a set of specific design criteria or design changes from NCDOT that have been created in response to these goals, whether it's traffic calming measures or intersection redesign or speed reductions? Have there been any specific design changes proposed to meet, these funding requirements and these goals? And if so, could they be shared with us?
Does someone from NCDOT want to address that question?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. I think that all of our design are constantly evolving to meet these metrics. You can look at our change in intersection designs, as you mentioned it, roundabouts, reduced conflict intersections. We're always evaluating our designs to meet these goals.
Yeah, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the strongest connection for these targets is with the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which is a set of federal funds that's essentially prescribed for safety projects.
So yeah, that's one bucket, but also in our STIP projects, design elements are being incorporated to make our facilities safer.
Thanks, Steve. I think Chuck McGrady has a question.
Now, just an observation. It seems strange to me that we would being asked to adopt targets that would appear based on history we have no possibility of meeting. I just don't understand what the rationale is for adopting targets that would appear to be unreasonable. I mean, again, I'm all about trying to stretch and get to the right place, but I mean, this exercise doesn't appear to have much meaning. I'll probably vote no. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yes, sir.
Did I hear you say that the goal by 2050 is zero?
Yeah. Toward zero is the exact.
Toward zero?
Yeah.
Okay.
The balance clear as can be, isn't it?
That's not a number.
I will note that the state is evaluated on this, and we are required to adopt targets, but we aren't directly evaluated on this. So it, at our level, may seem a little more fuzzy around the edges, but at the state level, it is, helping inform funding.
So do we adopt different ones from the state? And as Kim says, it's kind of like I said last year, if we're adopting something that we know we can't meet and spending a whole lot of time on it, it seems like a waste of time.
I understand that perspective as well. I think that what makes this somewhat of a difficult thing is that performance targets, performance management is a relatively new federal requirement. But it's a good general requirement. You should be trying to improve certain metrics with the projects that you're programming and how you're influencing the transportation planning process. As of right now, these targets are not influencing a lot of the funding decisions. Someday, maybe they will. It is something that's been brought up in meetings in Raleigh in the past, but I will say, again, I think that in terms of the choice that we have today, the state has a set of targets. We can adopt them and essentially say that, you know, the state's targets are in line with the MPO's vision for improving safety. I think that we can reject the target, at which point we would be required to set our own targets. And as Logan mentioned, that would be an additional responsibility that would then go to the MPO that would still not be influencing the funding decisions. But I would say a third option could be the adoption of targets with the potential comment of this is something we would like to collaborate with on NCDOT in the future when setting future targets, trying to establish something that might be more in line with or more realistic when considering current trends.
Well, that would make sense because then when you get the answer from NCDOT that all of our things are for safety, you might could say, give me 3 points, you know, instead of all of our things are for safety. Everything I eat is to make me healthy. Let's have a point, you know, 3 bullet points, something like that. And if we are adopting the state, that answered my question. Are we just adopting the one that just like theirs? Like holidays, for example, if you adopt the same holidays they do, then we adopt the same policies they do. Then you don't have to spend a whole lot of extra time.
Right, that's the point.
Okay, I understand now.
And to complicate it, I mean, they don't even average in the it's a 5-year rolling average, but they haven't even gotten the 2023 numbers
Right.
to average in, so we're setting off of 2022 numbers, just other muddy the waters.
I'd make a motion to adopt the targets defined by the state's methodology.
Do I have a second? Second for Larry Harris.
Parker has a question.
Oh, Parker, more comments?
Yeah, so sorry, real fast. This question, I guess, is for someone who understands these fatalities and injuries better than I do. It seems to me that to actually meet these goals, to Chuck's point earlier, we would need to invest in upgrading existing infrastructure to retrofit intersections and that sort of thing. And there's not, to my knowledge, some sort of associated, secret budget to help us do that. So that's just kind of in terms of like actually improving these metrics, it seems to me like retrofitting existing infrastructure is the only way to do it.
If you find that secret money, please let me know.
Well, I will say it's not necessarily secret, but there are pots of funds that the projects are not selected in a process as kind of publicized as prioritization. As mentioned earlier, there's a highway safety improvement program. It's federal funds that are used for safety projects. There's also the spot safety funding that goes to safety projects as well. There's also some funding within the divisions, the high impact, low cost that sometimes goes towards addressing safety projects. Those aren't necessarily secret, but they are less in the spotlight, I should say. I think another thing to point out is that next month we do plan on having an item on how the MPO will be looking at providing local input points, our methodology of how we evaluate projects and what we want to prioritize. And so this is something where I think improving safety, again, it's an adopted goal by this MPO. And that is one opportunity to tie those goals and those targets into how we want to program projects.
I'll have one last comment before we do a roll call. It would make sense if they just set them near zero, because that's the ultimate goal.
I will note really quick that we do have a little over 20 million in our region committed from the Highway Safety Improvement Program, and that's over the next couple of years. It's being implemented over the next couple of years in things like long life pavement markings, guardrails, intersection improvement, crossing, stuff like that. So there are efforts to retrofit current infrastructure in the short term.
Well, we have a motion and a second, so Is there any other comments before we do a roll call?
Okay, I'd like to kind of throw one thing in. This is Tim Anderson from Division 13. So there's a statewide crash report that comes out weekly, and I was just looking back at the last one. Working on existing infrastructure is very important. Designing our new projects to make sure that we're taking into account different users, not just focused on the highway itself, is critical as we move forward. As things change, I had a lady who visited our office the other week. She complained about dump trucks, and she made a comment, they bother me while I'm at work, because I work from home, where normally those dump trucks would have been driving by the house while she was in an office somewhere. And with those changes, we have to look, further than just downtown for whether there should be, pedestrian facilities and things like that. But, highway safety and specifically the fatality rate, just looking at fatalities, which are obviously the worst, and having a vision of zero. I go through the 5-year average, and I'm looking at this for 2023 year to date. This was December. There were 464 fatalities. No, 470. Let me make sure I get the right number, because I've got crashes and then I've got actual numbers of people. So, okay, 464 folks died because they weren't wearing seatbelts, or it was noted in the crash that no seatbelt was being worn. Now, had the crash been avoided by some countermeasure potentially, then the unbelted wouldn't matter. But the conscientious decision not to click the bell is a very big contributor to that. Out of the 1,560 that happened last year, lane departure crashes goes back to infrastructure. It's like 767. Speeding, 354. There are things in here that aren't operational countermeasures. It's education. It's getting folks to understand, and some of the governor's highway safety program and things like that work on those things independently of a highway project where we're moving dirt or adding shoulders or putting in a crosswalk. So it's a bigger piece of the fatalities on highways are bigger than just the infrastructure there. And I don't want to blame it on the driver, everything obviously, because there's improvements we can make. But there are pieces of this that reduction could be a lot quicker if we just get people to hook their seatbelt up and slow down. Those two things, and drunk driving, not counting, that statistic is as much as we know better. Drugs and alcohol, there's 325 fatal crashes related to alcohol and 95 related to drugs. So, that really goes into it if we can do some things there too. So, just want to kind of put that out there. We do capitalize on those programs, especially in our division. We do a lot of striping, and we do a lot of vulnerable user work where we can identify projects. But there's some other pieces at play as well.
That's a great point, Tim. Thank you. I do want to say Tom has patiently had his hand up.
Thanks, Tristan. I think I spoke to this last year in pretty much the same vein that Chuck McGrady did today. And I would just say that we've got goals that are decreasing 3% each year and an experience base that's increasing each year. And that gap is just getting bigger and bigger. And we are setting goals. I understand about the difficulties and what we're up against with the setting of goals and using more of our own staff time if we change goals. But friends, all we're doing here is precipitating the government bureaucracy. We are really contributing to that by voting yes on these goals because they're going opposite directions. And it just seems ludicrous for us to be doing that. I don't know the answer, but I just think it is ludicrous that we're doing that.
Any other comments?
I would like to say one more thing. if you take into account, one of the things that Tim was, well, what he was talking about was the number that are speeding, the number that don't wear the seatbelt. If you add to that the number that are distracted because they're texting and the number of drunk drivers, we're never going to get to zero. And if we do have $20 million of committed to safety, and we're saying that a lot of this is not going to be because of adding a traffic circle or a stop sign or maybe even a pedestrian walkway, then I'm looking at it from the point of view of education. I mean, sometimes the only way to get people to change their way is to convince them somehow, some way, to educate them and make it their choice that they have decided to put on their seatbelt or to not text and drive, not drink and drive, et cetera.
Yeah, and I will point out, we actually kind of had a flip-flop discussion with Tim and his predecessor, Mark Gibbs, regarding Merriman Avenue, that there were benchmarks set for I believe, the number of serious and fatal crashes. And we kind of brought up, not every crash is infrastructure related. So yeah, safety is something that requires a lot of different approaches.
Well, is any of that 20 million could be that or no?
I do believe that, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, that some of the governor highway safety program, there is an education component to that. So I think some of the billboards that are out there that are saying buckle up, don't drink and drive, I believe those are paid for through the governor's highway safety program.
They do a lot of outreach type events too, trying to get that word out. The earlier you can catch folks and get them focused on that, I'll be honest, when the seatbelt law went in, I was old enough to already be driving and I fought it. I just didn't like it. So I got my first seatbelt ticket. And then I realized I was being an idiot. Then I started wearing the seatbelt. My kids never question. They don't understand the car. They don't understand the concept of getting in a car and not buckling up. So over time, some of these things, with enough education and enough of that experience, those changes can take place. It's kind of off the topic of what you're trying to vote on. Sorry about that.
No, but I mean, it's all, yeah, I mean, I think the general question, I think everyone wants to improve safety.
And we want to understand.
Yeah, I think the question that's really before us today is, do we want to adopt a state target? And go along with those, as noted, they are very aggressive targets. I think I do want to be clear, there are metrics within our MPO where there is progress being made. It is not a big diversion. There are points of progress, but progress to the same extent as the target, no. So the options are, do we adopt the targets? Do we adopt the targets and say that we want to coordinate with the state so that next year when this item comes forward, we can work with the state on changing some of the targets? Because coordination with the state is a part of this target setting. Or do we want to reject these targets and essentially say that our region is going to go our own route when it comes to safety target planning?
We have a motion on the table to approve and a second to approve. I think we can add on to do another motion afterwards about coordinating with the state. But we do have a motion and a second that we have to proceed on.
Point of order or question.
Yes.
If the motion passes, as items come before us to weigh in on or approve, will we automatically ask the question, how do they fit toward achieving these goals?
Yeah, I think it comes up in ways beyond just these targets, just to be clear. Again, with the MPO's 25-year plan, improving safety is a clear goal. With the way that we've prioritized projects in the past, safety has either been towards the top or at the top of how we rank projects. And tying that back to those goals and to targets like this is something where that kind of helps piece together that rationale. I hope that makes sense.
I'm going to also say that we have some members on the board that advocate for safety in every motion that we make, and I'm calling out Kim for that, and that keeps us on track as well. Thank you. So we do have a first and a second. Are we ready for a roll call?
Does anybody need to be reminded of the motion before I do it?
Our motion is to adopt the targets defined by the state's methodology.
Asheville, Kimroni,
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady,
No.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan,
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet,
Aye.
Flat Rock and Coletta,
No.
Haywood County, Kevin Inslee,
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers,
Aye.
Henderson County, Bill Lapsley,
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley,
No.
Laurel Park, George Banta,
No.
Mills River, Shannon Gaunt,
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer,
No.
Rural Transit, David White,
No.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris,
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton,
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell, and Woodson, Jim McAllister.
Aye. So there's 11 ayes, 6 nays. So the motion passes. I would also say I would entertain another motion, if one is made, to coordinate with NCDOT or the state of North Carolina to set reasonable goals.
And also on that, to have points of what are truly being done about safety.
Would you like to make that motion?
Yeah, if I could help word it, make a motion that we would, in the future, coordinate with North Carolina on more realistic goals and have points of clarification on how we move forward with safety.
That's it, perfect right there. So we have a motion, do we have a second? I'll second. Second?
Kim has her hand raised.
And Kim, yes.
Yeah, could I ask a clarifying question? It's like, we're going to coordinate with DOT to have more realistic goals, but tell me how that fits into outcomes. Like, how does this motion suggest that we're going to see behavior change or action change around our budgets, plans, and policies so we actually get there?
Yeah, I think it's something that when we're at the table with them discussing, we can say, a lot of this is education. Can we put more money toward education? Is there other ways that we can achieve those goals in a more realistic way?
Yeah, I think so. Again, a big part of setting these targets is coordinating between MPOs and NCDOT. And so I think we can bring up the concerns heard from the board today, and we can ask Brian Murphy, who came in January, I think, to give a more detailed presentation on safety countermeasures. Kim, to your point on how your question on targets tied to funding, again, at this point, those ties are not really those that bind. That's something that's been brought up as a prioritization work group, that we need a stronger link between the targets being set across the state, not just for safety, but as a reminder, there's other targets for congestion, pavement condition, bridge condition, and other measures. So I think until we really have a more strongly established tie between those targets and funding, at this point, we just have the funding streams available that we do.
Okay, that helps a little bit. So I'm gonna offer a friendly amendment to the motion. I hope it would be considered that point systems are matched with budget plans and policies that impact education programs and design.
Education programs and what?
And design.
And design. That's good.
So we have a motion, do we have a second? We have a second. Yeah, we've had a adoption or an amendment to the motion, so we have to have a second to the amendment.
We did.
Ed Shannon does the amendment. And I think Ann Coletta has a question as well as Chuck McGrady, but we'll go down the line with Ann Coletta.
Thank you. It's not really a question, it's just kind of an observation. I appreciate very much the amendment that's now been brought forward. I will still be voting no. I have concerns about, I guess I would need more clarification about how exactly this idea would be approached before I would feel comfortable saying yes to this. But I do appreciate the fact that we're looking at working more closely with DOT on this, but my vote would still be no. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Chuck McGrady.
Yeah, I'll support the the other motion. And I obviously sit in a different position. And Tristan, I guess after this conversation and before my upcoming board meeting, let's have a conversation about how I can take this issue or help to take this issue to NCDOT Raleigh, because it just feels uncomfortable setting targets that are in no way realistic, whether here or in other areas. It's not an issue I was really aware of until this thing jumped up, and I could use your help, Tristan, to figure out how to cause a conversation to occur. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Any other comments, questions? We do have a motion, a motion to amend, and a second to the amendment. So please take what we're actually voting on. Tristan.
So I didn't write this down.
Well, she did. So could you please?
Yes. So this is what I got, is to meet in the future, to coordinate with more realistic goals with the state and have points of clarification on how we move forward. I summarized what you were saying. And then the amendment I did not get because it happened quickly and I was going to listen to the recording and add it back in.
Kim can give us the amendment about education and clarification.
Design.
Education and design.
Yeah, so that projects would be ranked for safety, including education, programming, and design to meet the goals or something like that would work.
Perfect. Thank you. Are we ready for a roll call?
I think so.
Yes, I think so as well.
Asheville Kimroni.
Aye.
DOT Division 14 Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County Parker Sloan.
Aye.
Canton Dr. Ralph Hamlet. Flat Rock Ann Coletta.
No.
Haywood County Kevin Inslee.
Aye.
Haywood County Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Henderson County Bill Lapsley.
Oh.
Was that a yes or no, Bill? We couldn't quite make that out.
Vote is no, N-O.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hendersonville Jennifer Hensley.
No.
Laurel Park George Banta.
No.
Mills River Shannon Gaunt. Montreat Tom Widmer.
Yes.
Rural Transit David White.
Aye.
Urban Transit Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville Catherine Cordell. Aye. And Woodfin Jim McAllister.
Aye.
That's 12-4?
Well, they're A13.
I'm sorry, 13 A4. No, so the A's have it. Thank you, everyone. That was a great discussion.
That was, thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the amendment to the 2024 to 2033 Transportation Improvement Program.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, or just as a refresher, we talk about the Transportation Improvement Program a lot, but it is our region's document that reflects planned transportation investments over a 10-year period, and it describes each project, its schedule for implementation, funding sources, and estimated costs. In other words, it's kind of a living accounting document for our region's federally funded projects over the next 10 years. This amendment is a pretty big one. I think it's probably the biggest that I've seen since I started working for the MPO around a year and a half ago. The heavy hitter or the star of this round of amendments is Section B of the I-26 connector project and Section D. Section B is the connector part of the connector project. It involves a new route for I-26 that goes over the French Broad River, rerouting freeway traffic off of Patton Avenue and Jeff Bowen Bridge, as well as new interchange with 240. It's increasing by roughly $200 million from $800 million to $1 billion, and it is the most expensive project in our region, so pretty big deal to be increasing by this much. Section D is improvements to Riverside Drive, and that's increasing by roughly $30 million. So big cost increases on our biggest project in the region, but it is in preparation for the project to let. So I think either later this month or early next month, they're going to let both sections of them. So it's a big cost increase, but kind of exciting in that way to see this project begin after decades of conversation about it. Beyond this, there's a few project delays with some of our locally administered projects, the Nasty Branch Greenway, Livingston Street, a complete street improvement, and the Craven Street Bridge improvement are all delayed a couple of years, give or take, just to account for some more time for design and right-of-way. And there's been a handful of delays in some pavement rehabilitation projects to balance the interstate maintenance program, and a few just administrative modifications to correct a few errors in the TIP, like lead agency, county, stuff like that, in some of our lab projects.
And one other that we noted in our email yesterday, ED 5822, known as the North Grand Greenway, also known as the Beckman Greenway. That's an extension of Asheville's Greenway system along the river, going up Riverside Drive from Hill Street, originally to Broadway. This amendment changes the scope to bring it just to Pearson Bridge Road. That's something we've coordinated with the city and NCDOT. That is a project that's partially funded by the MPO. And basically at Pearson Bridge Road, we have asked that NCDOT incorporate a connection over to the Riverside Drive project, so that we won't have, first of all, we won't have two greenways where you can, not even that far of a stone's throw, chuck rocks at each other, or water balloons, less violent. But also there's a number of environmental constraints north of Pearson Bridge. So we've been working with DOT and the city on changing the scope of this project for some time. So this amendment would make that official.
Any questions?
Motion to approve. Motion to approve.
Larry Harris has made a motion to approve the amendment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, Kim, you had your hand up, I'm sorry.
Well, of course, I have to ask, will this include the safety metrics by design to help make this commute more safe for people and help us to achieve our goal? Have there been any items removed from the project design that would move us in the wrong direction, or are we still on track to see all the improvements made so that everyone's getting to their destination safely?
So that's regarding the North Grand Greenway specifically. Yeah, so Just to be clear, so the North Red Greenway goes along basically the exact same termini as the Riverside Drive project. The North Red Greenway would be along the river. The Riverside Drive project is along Riverside Drive. As part of the Riverside Drive project, there's currently a side path on the west side of that project. And so again, at Pearson Bridge, they get very, very close together. And so it should be a safe connection from the termini of North Rad connecting over to the Riverside Drive side path. So a Greenway user would be able, or should be able to stay on a separated facility basically the whole way to Broadway. So even with the scope change, that would still be the ability of the Greenway user.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we weren't taking a step back. I know sometimes when we're talking about having to value engineer projects, we take out our community values at the cost of our community.
Thank you, Kim. So we have Larry Harris has a motion. I believe we have a second.
I think Parker seconded.
Parker, you seconded
That's right.
that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Any other discussion? Time for a roll call.
Asheville Kimroni,
Aye.
DOT Division 14 Chuck McGrady,
Aye.
Buncombe County Parker Sloan,
Aye.
Canton Dr. Ralph Hamlet,
Aye.
Flat Rock Ann Coletta,
Aye.
Haywood County Kevin Ensley,
Aye.
Haywood County Brandon Rogers,
Aye.
Henderson County Bill Lapsley,
Aye.
Hendersonville Jennifer Hensley,
Aye.
Laurel Park George Manta,
Aye.
Mills River Shannon Gaunt,
Aye.
Montreat Tom Widmer,
Aye.
Rural Transit David White,
Aye.
Urban Transit Larry Harris,
Aye.
Waynesville Anthony Sutton,
Aye.
Weaverville Catherine Cordell, aye, and Woodfin Jim McAllister.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Let me just say, in the world of government, we all voted unanimously. So, that was great. Next, we'll move on to the informational items, and something I'm very excited about is I'd like to welcome Jason Myers from North Carolina Department of Transportation Rail to give us a Western North Carolina passenger rail update.
All right. Jason, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Tristan. Everybody can hear me okay, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, awesome. I am going to share my screen in just a second here. I've got some slides. And they train us to use, I think it's this one? No, that one. There we go. Sorry, I'm not used to Zoom. You all are seeing my title slide, correct?
Yes, growing passenger rail in North Carolina.
Yes. And again, thank you, Tristan, for inviting me and for having me here. It's great to talk with you today. I'm the rail programs manager with the rail division. I joined the DOT team last summer. I spent most of the last 10 years before that working for the city of Raleigh and serving on the Campos Technical Coordinating Committee. So I know what the MPO staff there at French Broad do on a day-to-day basis, and I know the sort of decision process that you all go through. I can actually remember very similar discussions at our TCC to the one you just had about safety targets. So all of the MPOs are struggling with this thing. But while it's great to speak with you today, I'm sorry I can't be there in person. To drive up solo takes away a lot of productivity. Last week, I'm sorry, what was that?
You know, what would help with that is if we had passenger rail.
Exactly, and that's exactly my point. I was about to say that in last week, I attended a meeting in Charlotte and was able to work on both the train there and back, and that we're working to make that possible for Western North Carolina as well. So I'll dive right into it here and talk a little bit about the economic impact of rail and railroads in North Carolina. NC State's Institute of Transportation Research and Education recently conducted an economic impact study for the rail division and for the state DOT. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of details here, but just suffice to say that the economic impact of rail is very substantial and it touches every corner of the state. That's both passengers and freight. And a part of that economic impact is our existing passenger rail service. And I'll talk about this just a second to help understand what we're growing from, or what we're looking to grow from. We have 4 national network Amtrak trains that pass through the state of North Carolina, generally on a northeast to southwestern-ish sort of direction. We have state-supported services of both the Piedmont, which travels between Charlotte and Raleigh, back and forth on the North Carolina Railroad, and also the Carolinian that travels between Charlotte and New York City. Both of them are supported by the state DOT. And then the last element of this map is the throughway connections in Eastern North Carolina that are operated by Amtrak, and a connector in the Triad to help folks get to High Point and Greensboro from other destinations, including Winston-Salem. Our service was expanded in 2023, and our service has been one of the better performing ones in the nation in the last few years. But that the trend of increasing ridership is not unique to North Carolina. We are very proud of the ridership growth that we've had over the last few years. Our ridership is growing, and we're being successful, and train travel is something people want to do. And the more trains we put out there, the more they get filled up. We added a 5th frequency on the Raleigh to Charlotte service this July, and the ridership in the other trains didn't really skip a beat. It's not that people spread out onto more trains, it's that there was more options, so it was more useful to more people, and our ridership increased because of that. I learned this morning that January was the highest January ever. That's beyond this chart. And so we're kind of looking forward to probably having another record in 2024. In December, we released the Western North Carolina passenger rail feasibility study. This is the cover of it here. And I want to thank everybody who provided input on the plan. I know some of them work for the MPO, and some of you might be in the room today or online, and we very much value that input. But for those of you that aren't familiar with the document, I'll talk a tiny bit about it. It provides sketch estimates of cost, travel time, and ridership for a service between Asheville and Salisbury. And it assumes a service model of 3 round trips a day so that train travel is possible both morning, midday, and kind of late afternoon, evening, making it useful for a lot of different trip types. In Salisbury, a rider could catch a train to anywhere else in the Piedmont corridor. All of that ridership we just saw kind of gets tied into that system, as well as through those national network trains as far away as New Orleans or New York. And we expect, I do remember a few comments on the study about the specific schedules and everything. We do expect that service schedules would be adjusted to make those connections in Salisbury very seamless, but also note that all of those detailed assumptions are things that could change as the service is developed. And the Corridor ID or CID program is how we're going to develop that service. Asheville to Salisbury is one of 7 corridors that were entered into this federal program in December. Those are shown in green. There are 5 other corridors that the state applied for that were not entered into the program, and we'll work to resubmit those in future rounds and tweak those grants as well. But the Asheville to Salisbury service that you all are concerned about is successfully a part of that program. This map can be seen as our vision of what the state's intercity passenger rail service or network should look like in the future. And our intention is to build out a coordinated network of services that makes train travel to most anywhere in the state possible, and also connects us to other eastern states through the Southeast Corridor. That's that spine of the S line and Southeast Corridor up to Richmond, and then also eventually being extended to Atlanta through a high-speed rail proposal that the states of South Carolina and Georgia have been making with the federal government. We give an example. I'll pick on Fayetteville for a second. And talk a little bit about train travel in this network. And Fayetteville to Raleigh is one of those CID corridors, just like Asheville to Salisbury. There is certainly a lot of travel between Fayetteville and Raleigh and adjacent cities, or Fayetteville and the Triangle, I should say. But this sort of network also serves a substantial desire of those, let's say in Fort Liberty, to travel to the Pentagon or to Quantico in Northern Virginia. And it also supports travel between Fayetteville and Winston-Salem or Fayetteville and Asheville by connecting all of these things together. So we do see this as building on a spine of the Southeast Corridor and extending the train service to many other destinations, and that the whole of it, there's a lot of synergy in having that network. Having a road between, to make it a different analogy, having a road between somebody's house and somebody's office will serve them, but it will not serve that much. You connect it to the rest of the network, and suddenly that street or that road might be very useful to a lot of people. And passenger trains are really no different than that. But the rest of my presentation, I'm going to go into a lot more detail about what the CID program is and how it works. This project stages framework here was developed by the Federal Railroad Administration, and it kind of aligns their grant programs with the different stages, from systems planning and the very early to operation of train service on the other side. The CID program funds the early stages of project planning and project development. They're circled in red in this box. Many of you probably heard about the $1 billion grant the state of North Carolina won to extend the Piedmont service to Wake Forest and to start building the missing link of the Southeast Corridor between Raleigh and Richmond. That was funded through the Federal State Partnership for Intercity Passenger Rail, or FSP. And the goal of the Corridor ID program is to create a pipeline of shovel-ready projects that can feed into future programs like FSP. I mean, we don't know if Congress in the next round or the round after will call it FSP, but the idea is to create this project pipeline to begin articulating the projects, making them shovel ready, and then having them eligible for things like the money that was awarded for Raleigh to Richmond in December. I'm going to zoom in on those couple steps a little bit more and talk more specifically about CID now that I've talked about how it fits into the big picture. There's a 3-step program with Corridor ID, and by being entered into the program, by having that grant awarded, we are in that first step. And then when we complete the first step and have the deliverables of the first step approved, we move into the second step. And then when we have those things finished, then we can move into the third step. So it's kind of a sequential program where you have to do your homework on each step. The step one is really just scoping. It's writing down what it is we're going to do in details, how we're going to do it, how we're going to manage it, and then understanding what it's going to cost. That turns into a grant agreement that actually funds the real meat of service development plan, or of the service development plan is step 2. And that service development plan is funded 90% with federal funding. We'll require a 10% match of local or state funding for that. And we're going through the early parts of the exercise now to understand what that number is, what that X is in the chart to make up that 10% match. So the other things we're doing, and so where are we at now at this moment? We're focused on getting the grant agreements in place for step 1, so we can begin to have those resources to be doing that work and be hiring the experts we need to hire to do that. And we're setting up our systems to communicate with stakeholders. We're setting up systems to manage the entire project. You're going to see a better website and a quarterly newsletter set up, those sorts of things. That's all in the process. And we're also doing a little bit of outreach and meetings like this to make sure that people know what's happening behind the scenes and what to expect next. But step 2, the service development plan, is really where the regional engagement is most important. I'm going to go into some more detail there. And talk about the steps and the tasks of service development planning. So these are all the different tasks that the FRA has communicated to us as being probably necessary and important for a service development plan. And I'm not going to go through them all, of course, but I'll touch on a few highlights and describe that basically these tasks help answer questions such as who will run the trains. That's not necessarily Amtrak, or if it is Amtrak, how does that agreement structured? What kind of equipment will be needed? What will that equipment cost? How will that equipment be maintained? Where should stations be? And do we expect any of this to have impacts to the natural environment or cultural resources? And then another question is, how can we phase in a long-term vision? Are there incremental steps to get to where we might eventually want to be that isn't just all at once? Those are just examples of some of the questions that all these tasks will answer. But simply put, a service development plan answers the questions of what does it take to run an effective passenger train service on the corridor. And then kind of in summary, what are the outputs of that service development plan? It's an operational plans for how the service works, which is much more than a proposed train schedule. It's about the governance and the funding structure and the who does what sort of stuff. It's probably most importantly the list of capital projects that must be built for that service. And those two things can be tied together. It may be that you have an operational plan for 1 train a day and some projects to achieve 1 train a day, and an operational plan for 10 trains a day and a set of projects for 10 trains a day. And then that phasing is how do you go through that to get some of it incrementally in place potentially. And then those two things feed the next step, which is preliminary design and the documentation of environmental impacts, or NEPA planning, as the planners and MPO officials will often say. And that's the step 3 of the CID program. And we're eligible for that funding too, once we work through the service development planning process. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up my presentation. I do have the ability to answer a lot of questions, and if there's time, and I recognize there may not be time, please reach out to me with my email and my phone number there if you have any questions or concerns about CID, and I'll turn it back over to Tristan and the MPO staff. Thank you.
I'm sure we have questions.
So Jason, you said it's roughly a 6-month process for stage 1 of CID for scoping. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do think that's a good estimate about how long that scoping effort will take. A big part of that is having all of the previous work that's been done reviewed by the FRA. And so there's some back and forth there. It's not just as simple as going to a consultant and saying, give us a scope for the work. So we've been estimating about 6 months is a pretty appropriate estimate for a project that's relatively simple, like Asheville to Salisbury. To be honest, there are other corridors that involve multiple states and multiple different railroad conditions where we expected that to take a longer time. But yeah, about 6 months is our hope. It may be a little bit longer, and we might be able to achieve it a little bit sooner.
Jason, I'll just tell you what I tell all of our project managers, which is it's easy to call something relatively simple before you get into NEPA. I'll just note that. But I think my main point is, so if there are things that our member governments or our board officials would like looked at as part of the next steps, then getting in touch with you and your office in the next 6 months to make sure that's included in the scoping documents, that's what they should be doing.
Absolutely, yeah. And to be honest, and I'm happy to hear any of those ideas and respond to them, incorporate them as we can. There may be things that are asked of local stakeholders that we would love to do and really are not eligible from an FRA perspective to put into that. But we can negotiate that and kind of check those things with the FRA with you over that time, and help find other ways to answer those questions if it is something the FRA doesn't think is appropriate for the service development plan.
Okay, and I mean, one of the things from the study is, there have been requests to look at potentially extending beyond Biltmore Village to the River Arts District. That's something that would be determined in the development of the service development plan.
Yes, I think that's an important thing, and a part of that discussion, what does it take to achieve one or the other? A part of that may be questions of phasing. There's certainly a cost benefit aspect to that. I think the idea of a service development plan is to make those determinations, or at least set yourself up to decide those things in the NEPA process afterwards, with the correct with the correct inputs and the correct perspective. So I can't promise that we will be able to resolve that question within the service development plan. I think we would hope to, and certainly a part of that comes down to desires locally. Then there may be an aspect of the NEPA process has to kind of be the final decider for something like that.
you. Jason, what can we do as an MPO to assist you?
I think I heard the question is, what can we do as the MPO to assist you? Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I think at this point, be ready to kind of respond on the MPO staff level and as engaged stakeholders when we're beginning the service development process. And a part of that is going to, in fact, I'm going to go back to, if I can share my screen a little bit more efficiently than I did last time. I got to hit the button again.
There you go.
Yeah, here we are. So back to, oh, wrong.
Wrong view. Yeah.
Correct.
We get to see your notes for a second.
Yeah. Screen 2. There we go. Okay. That'll zoom in a little bit better. I wasn't anything in my notes you didn't already hear me say. But there's a lot of things in here, especially in this technical analysis and alternatives analysis part of it, that I do think MPO staff have an insight to that can help make sure that the rail division team and our consultants are on the right track, especially when it deals with local conditions, things like station location or station access, that kind of stuff. And there's, this whole task of stakeholder engagement is something that we're going to be going to MPOs and RPOs and council of governments and local governments and asking to talk with them about this service and about what it might mean and about what the project impacts might be. As a, for instance, and I don't know that there will be any of this on the Asheville to Salisbury corridor, but if a service development plan required a grade crossing closure or a creation of a new grade separation to really function safely, those sorts of things have local impacts, and and how to go about that is something that we would want to engage with. What's the service pattern? The whole question about where is the right location for service to stop in Asheville is certainly a part of that. And a part of that's also going to be involving the public in this process and making sure that we're setting up a service that meets the needs of a region or a local community where we're trying to serve.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Jason? Well, I'm hoping that we get to spend a lot of time with you, Jason, in the future.
I was going to say, poor Jason has now had, I think, 3 meetings with me in the last 7 days, and I warned him there would be more. So, Jason, thank you for your presentation. We'll make sure this gets posted. And I was supposed to, Jason asked me to post a link strategically. I forgot. Sorry, Jason.
That's
but
okay.
In the chat,
And
in the chat
I can
is
send, Tristan, if you'd like, I can send a PDF of the slides I presented to you via email, and you can kind of add those to the record. The link that Tristan just put in the chat is the link to the final Western North Carolina feasibility study. It's on the Connect NCDOT website, and you can download it and look at it there. I know a lot of people looked at the draft. There's a number of corrections and changes and refinements that happened in the months after we got comments. And so please distribute that copy and read that copy. And if you have any questions about it, let me know.
Thank you so much, Jason. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to the Division 13 project milestones for 2024. Anna?
Yes, I'm here. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yes.
Working on screen share. Just bear with me a moment. Let me know if you can see the title slide.
Yes, the Division 13 project milestones.
Okay, great. So yeah, we're gonna look at a few projects that are currently under construction and what to expect as far as milestones for 2024. Also gonna look at a few projects that are under development that will go to construction this year. But as a reminder, we do provide the full list of active construction projects in Division 13 and projects that are under development. So that list should still be available on the NPA's website. We're just trying to highlight a couple as it pertains to this calendar year. So I want to start with I-26 widening in Buncombe County, 4700 between I-40 and Airport Road. This picture or these photos were taken sometime in December. Just wanted to kind of show you the progress on the eastbound alignment paving operations near Airport Road. But the contractor, as far as their paving goals for 2024, their goal is to have the eastbound traffic on the new alignment from Long Shoals to Airport Road by the end of the summer, with westbound on its permanent alignment as well. We won't be using all 8 lanes though. They also hope to have all of westbound traffic on its permanent alignment all the way through the project by the end of 2024. So those are the paving goals for this year for the Buncombe County widening portion. This is a photo of the French Broad River Bridge. It's a couple weeks old at this point. They've made even more progress on these approach slabs, but they completed the remaining deck closure pour about 2.5 weeks ago. So the French Broad River Bridge was constructed in 3 different segments. This section in the center was poured to connect the different segments to make it ultimately one structure. They've been working the past couple weeks on the south approach slab and the north approach slab. And I believe they're about to pour the north approach slab either the end of this week or the beginning of next week. What else is going on out there? We've had this causeway in the river constructed. It's basically a pile of riprap that works as it's essentially a workbench where we can get equipment out into the river to build the bridge. You can see a piece of it here in this photo, but they're going to be removing that causeway in the next couple of months as well. Here's a photo of the Blue Ridge Parkway Bridge. It's also a couple of weeks old. We've made quite a bit of progress out there just since this photo was taken. So I believe that they're setting the second to last piece over I-26 with a crane. And that's supposed to happen Saturday morning. So the contractor, we're going to close a section of I-26 East from 4 to 8 a.m. on Saturday. And that's to lift the final piece here over I-26. And then the last piece will be set over the west abutment side with the segment lifter, this blue piece of equipment in the photo. The next major step scheduled. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt your presentation, but what I find fascinating about this portion is that you're going to have some kind of cable structure that will pull the bridge together into one piece. Is that correct? And that'll take a couple of months?
Yeah, so sometime late in February, after they set these 2 pieces, they're going to pour concrete to close a gap on the western abutment. And then after that, concrete cures, they're going to increase the tension in the cables that run through the segments of the bridge. And so after those 2 operations occur, then we'll do a final pour to connect both sides of the bridge. So after they set this last piece, there's going to be like a 2 or 3 foot gap between the 2 sides. After they tension the whole structure, then they'll form and pour the closure gap. So that's probably going to be another 4 to 6 weeks from now. There's not an exact date yet that's been determined for that. But yes, this whole bridge will be tensioned with cables that run through the segments.
Thank you.
So remaining operations after that include building short sections of the Blue Ridge Parkway that lead up to the new bridge on both sides. I have a photo of that on the next slide. I'll touch on that in a second. And then other tasks include placing a 2-inch overlay on the deck, building a 5-foot sidewalk, and then some stone masonry in specific locations. But the opening date is still to be determined. So as you can see, there is a bit of roadway work on the parkway that's going to be required before we can put traffic on the new bridge. You can see in this photo, here is the current alignment of the parkway leading into the existing structure over I-26. This black line is the new structure and new alignment. And so in these yellow highlighted sections, there's some work going on currently on the parkway. In these yellow sections, we're having to build a reinforced, stabilized slope, which is essentially a retaining wall that you won't be able to see. It looks like a natural vegetated slope, but essentially it's reinforced so that we can construct it on a steeper slope. Same thing you achieve with the retaining wall. So that work started, I believe, in the middle of January. You can see there was quite a bit of erosion control that went in ahead of that work. Want to touch on the new interchange, STEP project HE0001. Work is expected to start within the next month on ramps C and D, and that's the I-4700 westbound alignment or I-26 westbound alignment. The last couple of months, we've been working on a culvert extension that was required to add the interchange, and some clearing, grubbing, and erosion control primarily. Designed for ramps A and B, so the I-26 eastbound on and off ramps is still ongoing. We've only got about 65% plans for that portion of the interchange. This next slide is just a zoomed in, a very blurry vision of the interchange design for those of you who haven't been involved or aren't familiar. It is essentially a divergent diamond interchange, or will be sort of half of one, I guess. The I-26 westbound will be a left exit off and on. So this crossing location here will be the only signalized intersection for the interchange. So other projects that are under construction, we have a resurfacing contract for I-40 between mile markers 45 and 50. I've touched on this the past few meetings, but the concrete pavement repairs on I-40 in the left lane approaching Smoky Park Highway from the I-26 were completed in December. And then we've had a pre-construction meeting for the remaining resurfacing that was held a couple weeks ago, and they're anticipating starting the rest of the resurfacing work in March or April once spring temperatures get here. Another project you'll notice, if you're in this area, I-40 eastbound, exit 53A, we're doing a project on the off-ramp to add right turn and acceleration lane here on Charlotte Highway. So the contractor has begun work on this project. You'll definitely have noticed if you're driven in this area. There was a delay. They found an unknown utility conflict when they started, but it's been resolved. And they're primarily been working on the installation of the drainage system components. And they're going to be working on that the rest of the winter, but they should have this project completed by the end of this fall. That's what I'm told. Want to move the projects in development and highlight our larger ones. I-2513 AA and AB. Just a reminder, the scope of this is replacement of existing concrete pavement on I-40 between Monte Vista Road and Sand Hill Road. That will also include widening of the existing I-40 eastbound to I-26 eastbound ramp. So it's currently single lane, that exit. It'll be dual lane after this project. And then also AA and AB adds the new I-40 westbound off ramp to Smoky Park Highway, which includes a bridge over the railroad. So this is just a visualization of that new ramp that'll be constructed as part of this project. Right-of-way is currently underway, and it lets in April, and we're expecting construction to begin this summer. Section AC, this is the widening of I-240 from north of Bear Creek to south of Haywood Road. This is another one that right-of-way acquisition is currently underway. We're planning to let this one in November of this year. So it's not just the widening to 6 lanes, but this also includes the split interchange from Brevard Road to Amboy Road here. And then the connector. So this section, again, to review the scope, widening of I-26, I-240 from Haywood to Patton, Haywood and Broadway interchange improvements, the improvements to Riverside Drive, which is technically the D portion, and then the new location interstate. This section of the project is currently in the design build procurement process. We do have 3 design build teams that have been shortlisted. When the procurement process is completed and the project is awarded, the winning design build team will then begin completion of the final plans, right-of-way acquisition, and then utility relocation. The construction schedule is going to vary depending on the winning team's approach to the project. And I will say the procurement process is extremely confidential. So we'll have some more information available after the award, which is scheduled for the 20th, February 20th. So, which is that next week. We also are developing a staff or forming a staff to help administer this. So there'll be extra hands on deck around Division 13 to help with communication on this one as well. Wanted to touch on a couple others that are in development. This is I-4409. This is the interchange in Black Mountain, or the project to convert Blue Ridge Road from grade separation to an interchange. We're about 65% plans complete on this project. We are expecting, we're still on schedule to go to right away in May of this year, but won't be letting the project for construction until June of next year. Another one coming up really soon, the Mills Gap Cane Creek intersection. We do have right-of-way funds authorized, so we're expecting to begin right-of-way acquisition by the end of, or the beginning of March. And utility relocation is expected to begin in June. Excuse me. And we're planning to let it for construction in July. So we should see construction beginning sometime in August. I did want to point out, you guys may be interested to know that we have decided to close the road for approximately 2 weekends to allow for paving rather than developing an on-site detour. We made that decision to save costs of the temporary pavement to develop an on-site detour. But there will be plenty of press ahead of those closures when the time comes. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on a couple of pedestrian projects. The I-240 Charlotte Street project was completed. This was initially came up as a spot mobility project funded by the state to add the right turn lane on the I-240 eastbound off. We coordinated with the city and the MPO to get the STBGDA funds to add pedestrian signalization and crosswalks at both of the I-240 intersections on Charlotte. So we have completed this project. We actually ended up constructing it with state funds. So when we close the project out, we'll be returning the DA funding to the MPO. The second project on here is the Riceville Road sidewalk. We're currently doing a feasibility study to review 2 alternatives, primarily to see the level of impacts that would be required to get full accommodation at the intersection with US 70 as shown in this image here. Basically to see what we're able to do with the funding that we have. I will say the other alternative, which is the one we initially requested funding for, is similar to this. The east side of Riceville Road remains the same. And then the west side of Riceville, this section of sidewalk is still there. And there's a mid-block crossing for pedestrians here with an RRFB. But this extension down to US 70, crossing Craig Circle and crossing the western approach of US 70 is not in the other alternative. So I think this will be our preferred alternative, but impacts in this northwest quadrant could get pretty costly. So we're kind of, they've developed the concepts. We're just waiting on the estimates to come back from our various units. And that's all I had. Happy to take any questions you guys may have.
Any questions for him? You want to forego your Division 13 update?
Yeah, so I actually didn't plan to add anything for regular updates. Again, we have those lists that we provide with the full list of active construction and projects that are in development that are available. So have those for your reference. I'm happy to take any questions, but that's it for me for this month.
Thank you so much. Fascinating.
Thank you. I mean, a lot of what we talked about at the MPO is years and years away, but I think just to note, there's a lot of progress being seen from discussions that happened here years and years ago. So I do want to give Division 13 a special shout out. All the work that's going on. There is a whole lot of stuff that is moving. I think our executive director, Nathan Ramsey, I wouldn't be surprised if you see him in a lawn chair on the Blue Ridge Parkway as they're pouring the final concrete. He is a bit obsessed with that bridge, and for good reason. But some of those projects, I just want to note, that's kind of the division going above and beyond. As Hannah talked about, the Wrightsville Road project, that was actually brought up by an MPO TCC member, a Waynesville representative, who brought up concerns about pedestrian access at the VA. The division jumped on that comment, started looking at options, and came to us to ask about funding opportunities. And so to me, that's a great example of the coordination and the division folks working extra hard. And I also want to thank Tim Anderson. As part of the I-26 connector, I requested that we reform a group to make sure that there's local government coordination going on. And that's something that they've agreed to take on. I think that considering we're now over $1 billion, people might talk about it a little bit, and making sure folks are on the same page and aware of what's going on, I think is going to be especially critical. And the last thing that Hannah, I think only briefly mentioned, is the Craven Street Bridge project. That's something that has been on the books for a while, and the division recently, I think, wrapped up an express design to try to get a better grasp on that. So thank you guys for all the work you're doing.
Next is one of my favorites, Division 14, of course. There's a lot of activity going on as well.
Yes. So, starting with the construction update, some of these are old, even though we do have some new stuff. Just as a reminder, and Hannah mentioned this too, resurfacing in general. When the weather warms up, then we'll continue resurfacing, and that goes for I-40. There's not much left to be done there, but it will finish up this spring. Also, the bridges that are near Jonathan Creek on I-40, this 276 comes out. If you remember, we went into winter traffic pattern back in November, which is one lane in each direction, and that'll continue into May before they open it up to 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. New projects, the 2 bridges, one's US 19 going towards Maggie Valley, and the other one's on 2374 over Richland Creek. Those are right beside each other. That contract was awarded to Zachary Construction Company. It'll take a couple of months to get everything in place before they start construction. Some of the clearing's already been done for that because if you remember, there was another design that kind of got nixed by Raleigh, and we had to redesign stuff. So anyhow, construction will be starting there. Also, construction will be starting on Russ Avenue in Waynesville. That contract let in December was awarded to Buchanan and Sons. Kind of the same thing there. It'll take a couple of months for them to get all their bonds in place and such before we actually see mobilization for construction. Walnut and Main Street, we've talked about that. That's mostly complete other than just basically punch list items. It's fully open and operational. The sidewalk there on Moody Farm, or from Flytop Road to Moody Farm Road in Maggie Valley, I incorrectly stated the last meeting that was completed, and it wasn't. There's still a few ped heads that have to go up. They may be up by now, but it's mostly complete, so redeem myself. I-26, as I always say, nothing nearly as exciting as the Blue Ridge Parkway Bridge. The same thing that you've been seeing for a while. As we get concrete pavement structures in place, then the traffic will shift, so be aware of that. Moving into Henderson County, on I-26 again, through Green River Bridge, we talked about this the last meeting, but the traffic shift has occurred there. If you remember, from a video we had a year or two ago, they're working on the portion of the bridge between the two existing bridges. They shifted traffic so that they can then work on the two exterior portions of the bridge, and that has happened. Should see another traffic shift towards the end of this year, but we'll let you know about that as we get closer. Holland Lake Road, the progress is being made, fortunately. Acousta Trail just started construction at the end of last year, and the resurfacing on North King Street and Main Street will finish up again this spring when things warm back up. On the project development side of things, sorry, Steve, there's a lot there. No, we're good. We on that stuff. Okay, it's the same projects that you've been seeing for a while, so we won't go over each individual one. Those first couple of bridges on I-40, more I-40 bridge replacements. Lots of bridge replacements in Haywood County. About, I don't know, partway down anyhow, it's bridge number BP14-R005. I copied and pasted incorrectly there. The first one, R005, is actually a bridge over Allens Creek on Lanier Lane, just to make sure you know that. The second one is correct, the one over Southern Railroad on Groundhog Road.
I always like to say that Haywood County has the best names of roads.
Indeed. Again, it's really the same projects you've been seeing for a while. As Hannah said, these are on the French Broad River MPO website, so you can take a look at them at your leisure. And if you have any questions, just let me know. In Henderson County, we can scroll down just a little bit. Those first two bridges there have been added recently. They weren't on the list before. Again, it's just to keep you aware. Bridge projects, as we stated, they have their own set of funding and go by a different set of criteria. We really don't have, as the NPO, we don't have input into those, but I do want you to be aware of what's going on out there. And also, Project R2588B, which is NC 191 and Mills River, the schedule on that had moved to July of 2025, and then it bounced back to January of 2025. So we hope that holds there so we can get that let. The design's complete, 100% plans on that. As we always say, we're having a budget crisis, ongoing budget crisis, so these schedules are likely to change. Any questions from anybody?
Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Next is Daniel Sellers with Transportation Planning Branch.
Okay, no overly complicated updates from me this month. We did have a productive meeting on the CTP at the beginning of the month, and we'll have probably another staff meeting on that to work out some kinks later. I did have a traffic forecast pop on my desk this week. This is for the southern half of Swing Creek Road. And it's been a while since I've been able to announce that there was a traffic forecast being worked on. That shows kind of how slow projects have been. But if your staff received an invitation to comment on that, please remind them to fill it out, because I think more comments make better projects. I looked through the CC list and I went through the divisions and the city of Asheville to several people and the MPO and RPO. Other than that, I didn't see anything interesting in the freight bulletin. Obviously I-26 and I-40 are still up there for congestion as a top 10 spot in the state. I'll remind everybody that, registration is open for the annual MPO conference in New Bern this year. It's April 17th to 19th. And, it's where you can learn how, the staff gets all their training. But I'll also remind you that if you, want to get a gander at how that conference operates, Tristan did volunteer you to host it in 2 years. So you may want to know what you're getting in Bedford. I feel like I had one. No, I think that's it for updates from me. If I think of anything else, I'll send an email.
Thank you. Any questions for Daniel? Thank you, Daniel. Next is MCDOT Integrated Mobility Division updates. We have Alexis Parents, which we're very excited to have you in the room. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So I have quite a few updates for today. We did have our transit call yesterday, so some of these may be repeats for those who attended. For our FY21 funding grant, there are adjustments that will have to be made. We are anticipating that more people will apply and we won't have the funding to support it all. So those that will be adjusted are the combined capital and rural estate operating funding. And so if you have combined capital requests that are not approved in FY25, you can always apply for FY26. So please don't apply, still apply for those. Next, we have our 2024 multimodal planning grant announcement. So the call for projects went out February 12th of this year, and the deadline for that is March 25th. This is for our bicycle and pedestrian plans, multimodal network plans, plan updates, and plan acceleration. This year, well, for 2023, but our starting this year, we awarded 2 for your area, and that's Woodfin and Mars Hill. And those will kick off soon for y'all. Next, we have our FY25-5303 applications were due January 31st. The final documents, the UPWD and other documents are due March 31st. If you have questions about those, you can always contact your regional grant specialist, which would be Brandy. The certs and assurances haven't been released by FTA yet, but once they are, we will let y'all know. The Unified Grant application opens April 1st and closes October the 4th. These are for your rural grants, your travelers aid, and your concept funding, your 5311 admin and operating combined capital, your 5310, and all of your other grants. You can apply for that through EBS, but that opens in April 1st. Next, we have FTA has opened their low to no grant, or their 5339C. This is their low to no emissions grant. It opened February 8th and it closes April the 25th. They awarded $1.5 billion under the grant for the 2, so it's 5339B and 5339C. And 5339B is the buses and bus facilities. If you are applying with IMD, you would have to apply through IMD, just to let you know. The Transit Manager Boot Camp is March 19th at NC State, or at the Itri building at NC State. And these are for transit managers who have 3 or less years of experience. The UGA training is March 19th. It's in person and it's during the new director training. We will have a webinar March 25th, and that will also include a hands-on webinar. And then another webinar March 3rd with the hands-on experience happening March the 4th. The IMD has taken on the Human Traffic Awareness Program. We're really excited about it. We have 3 urban agencies complete their training this year, and 28 rural agencies complete their training. Any announcements that we have about those in future, we will let you know, but it's a great program. We would like to bring more awareness to human trafficking, so please watch out for our announcements for that. We're doing more work with that throughout the year. Let's see, February 23rd, the TDM materials will be posted on NCDOT's website. I believe Landis Sky was awarded this year for FY23. or they're currently funded for FY '23. So the applications for '24 or the materials will be posted on February 23rd. The deadline for the application and to have your budget submitted will be March the 29th. It'll go to the BOT on June 1st. And it'll go to the BOT in May, and June 1st will be the start of your period of performance. And then last but not least, we have social media. So we are now on social media. We have a LinkedIn page. It is NCDOT Integrated Mobility Division, and a Twitter/X page is NCDOT_IMD. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions, Carla? I would say there was a lot of acronyms, and I think we have some new members that have joined us. We will be offering an orientation class again.
Yes, we're planning on that for Thursday, March 7th, so we'll send out a note for folks.
I would encourage everyone to attend that, even if you've been to it before. We love our acronyms. So, we have our own language. Speaking of, do we have someone for the FHWA Federal Highways and FTA update?
I don't see Suzette on.
Loretta is here.
Loretta, are you able to provide updates today? Sorry to put you on the spot.
This is Loretta. I don't have any updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta. Thank you, Loretta. Next is subcommittee work group reports, staff updates, and housekeeping.
I won't go through them all. Your committee updates are in your packet. A lot of our committees are still active. We recently met with the 5307 subrecipient group. There's a lot to get through with 5307 and the funding that comes to our region, and also the prioritization subcommittee. I think we came in just under 2 hours. Yeah. Catherine, again, I don't know if you fully knew what you were signing on for, but thanks for volunteering for the subcommittee.
That was a good first meeting to the end.
Okay, yeah, good, so different. But beyond that, as Daniel mentioned, the North Carolina Association of NPOs, that'll be meeting April 17th through April 19th in New Bern. So if you're interested in joining, please let us know. And also, we did volunteer, I will say, anytime conferences and future conferences come up, myself and Wilmington usually get a long stare from people in the room. And so we volunteered, I'm making quotes, in 2026. So we will be hosting, I think our board members have to buy everyone beers, but no. So we will start planning for that relatively soon. As you know, we do have a lot of special studies. Updates are in your packet as well. But we are contracting for our Safe Streets for All regional plan. That should be getting started relatively soon. Also, 2050 socioeconomic projections that looks at how much growth is coming to the region and where it's going to go and what the traffic impacts are likely to be. That'll be getting started soon, as well as our 2050 MTP. So those are just a few, and then there's a whole bunch more in your packet that are either underway or going to be underway soon. And no legislative updates today.
Announcements, news, and special updates. Topics for next meeting.
Topics for next meeting, we'll talk about our prioritization methodology, our final UPWP, and we have a couple of informational presentations that we've been coordinating on.
Thank you. Next, do we have any additional public comment? Hearing none, I'll adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, folks.